Weebles, 360 swings, jet suits and hover bikes. Moving in an unhuman-like fashion is a little bit of me. And next up, I want to be a parkouring, bullet jumping space ninja. Space Ninjas, explain yourself first. Well, this project sponsor, Warframe, it's a free-to-play online action game which is set out in a massive star system of unique and bizarre planets. But the characters you control, the Tenno, basically are Space Ninjas, and they can move in the way in which we want to be able to move. They can jump all over the place, they can dart all over the place. They do this thing called a bullet jump, where they jump up and then shoot forward. We can't do that. We want to be able to do things like that. This is the colinfurze anti-gravity parkour bullet jumping super frame. Yes, so little Colin will be strapped to the end here, massive long arm, big fat counterweight. If we get our maths and measurements right, these two should balance each other out. So a tiny little jump will result in a lot bigger jump. And of course it's going to be on a bearing, and if I jump hard enough, I'll be able to go all the way over, right over to the other side. Excellent. Now, as well as that being on a bearing, the whole base of it will be on a bearing, so we'll be able to run around in circles. Fantastic. Size-wise, I think this can be like 6 to 7 metres long with a pivot about 3 metres high, which will mean when I'm upside down at its highest point, I'll be about 10 metres in the air. That is huge, just like this game. So Warframe is a cinematic masterpiece, and it is a huge game set over planets and everything in between them. But what is coming out in April is the new DUVIRI paradox, and this basically transforms the game into a time-looping open world adventure that will be available completely free on April 26th. Now, of course, I've always got a little bit of sugar for you, haven't I? Yes, if you go to warframe.com and go to the in-game marketplace, put in the code DUVIRI-FURZE, you can get a load of free items which upgrade your character to be the ultimate bullet jumping space ninja. Now then, support them, support sponsors. It's always worth it. It's what makes building massive things like this possible. And this is going to be massive. So big, I'm not going to be able to do it in this tiny shed. So, to the barn. Okay, first up, I've got a massive bearing. This is basically for the swivel base, of course, for the whole thing to turn round. Now, I say massive, but I think by the time we've built everything else, this might look a little bit puny. So if it's not strong enough, we'll have to change it out later, but this is our starting point. Now, first thing we're gonna make a platform to sit the whole thing on. Give it a little pad, something that we can then level it off and something for it to sit on. We're gonna have to swing around some massive bits of metal. Space Ninja, here I come. So with the telehandler fired up, it's time to test out my new magnet and swing some big, massive, long lengths of metal all around the workshop, getting loaded them up on the bandsaw on my own, which proved quite tricky, but I did it. So once I've got all my bits of metal cut, it's time to take it over to the fabrication table and get it all jigged up and all clamped down ready for welding. Now the fabrication table itself is not big enough to fit it all on in one piece, but I've got some little standy bits which I managed to use as kind of table extensions, and basically it was fine. Once complete and fully welded up, it's time to pick it up with a telehandler and flip it over and place it on its legs. I knew this bearing wouldn't look very big once I'd sat it on top here, but should be okay. If I build everything correctly, all the forces on it should be in compression. But, just in case I haven't, I've got a backup plan. We've got this. This is a big lorry stub axle. We're going to plasma cut a plate out, fix that down in the middle, and then weld this to the next bit of frame that goes on. So if anything does go wrong, it's an extra bit of security. Also, it's got a brake on it. That's going to become useful. Right, plate, doodah, it's taking shape. This next bit I was particularly excited about. Finally cutting a full sheet of steel on a plasma cutter. Now this is 10mm thick, which is half the capacity of what it can actually cut, but it's still a lot thicker than what I'm normally used to working with. Oh, what a machine! I love how even with all the experience I've got of metalworking, I still look at every piece of metal and think I can lift it easy.
baby, lately I've been in my head, cut me some slack. And I heard that your friends think that I'm just trash. So maybe live a little, see your favorite act in town. I got some tickets in the music business, they're just around. Cause baby, lately I've been wanting you to see me.
And that is that. Okay, we've got a swivel bearing. Now, before I cut this 10mm plate out, I actually did a wooden template to test fit, test all the holes lined up, everything was perfect. Because if I ruin one of these sheets, a sheet of 10mm at the moment is over £300 a sheet. Oh, so be nice to the sponsors, that's what makes these things happen. Yes, the sponsor. A big thanks again to Warframe for helping me bring this epic machine to life in my workshop. I've been playing the game to make sure this machine recreates its fast-paced, acrobatic gameplay, and I've been having a blast. You can now play it for free on all platforms today, and don't forget the code. Right, now, back to the video. Now then, once it's all on, I've got these little lugs which I'd welded in. These basically locate the bearing, so if I ever drop it back on in the future when it's got loads of other stuff on it, as well as trying to line all these holes up, it'll definitely sit in the centre and where it needs to be. Now, to thread the holes, I've basically been using these things. These are pretty cool. Look, they're by HMT. They're a thread tap which goes in an impact gun. So you just put it in, gun it through. Sounds completely wrong, but works really well. And a final addition, to make this whole thing pick up a bit better, rather than dangling it off straps, I've welded Q-fit fittings so the JCB can lock onto it, pick it up, and manoeuvre it around a lot easier. Oh, that makes me feel manly, that does, having something that fits onto the JCB. Right. Next job, I've got to make the hub for the bit that goes up here, because then once I've done that, then I'll know how to make like the forks of the whole thing. Oh, it's all very big. Yeah! Right, my internal CAD software says you need to make a 600mm square, Colin. So after using the fabrication table to its full potential, using all the clamps and squares, the next bit I wasn't quite sure what to do. There was a lot of staring, a lot of measuring. Ta-da! I got there. So time to fire up the plasma cutter, basically weld some massive plates onto each side. This is where the swing arm and the counterweight will be attached to this central hub. Right, pleased with this. Looks like a proper bit of machinery. I'm kind of looking at it now, realising I'm actually making a small fairground ride. Now, the only thing I'm worried about, it is mega heavy. Now, I knew it would be heavy, but then when you make it and you start mauling around, you're like, it is heavy, isn't it? Which means, obviously, the forks, which go up and hold this whole thing, they've got to be strong enough and substantial enough to hold this, the counterweight, and the swing arm. Now, I've kind of done a few little drawings on the computer to work out all the angles and stuff, because I want to kind of put some geometry into it, so it's not just straight down, straight up everything. It kind of like a pyramid leans into everything, give it a bit more stability. It's going to be tricky, this bit. Now, it's going to be tricky because I've got to cut two angles in one sitting. Now, I've done this mistake so many times. You set the bandsaw up at an angle, you chop it down, and you think, I'll flip it round, set it up at the other angle, and chop it. But you can't do that. You've got to do them both at the same time, which means basically I've got to sit the bit of metal in, hutch it up an angle, and then cut it down at the other angle. I'm going to make some mistakes on this, I know it. So with the first angle set on the bandsaw, I had a genius idea of lifting the bit up with a wedge of the second angle. Okay, they're cut. Now, I'd be lying if I said I got that right first time. Mistakes were made. But anyway, we've got 4 bits. They're all the same. They've got the right angles on. I've gone ahead and cut all the bits that are going on the top of it, where the axles mount. My next problem is because this is like a pyramid, I can't just whack it on the fabrication table, clamp it all up, and weld it all up, because there's angles to consider. So we've got like a funny jig thing, which holds it all in the right position. It's better be worth it, these angles, because they're causing me a lot of problems. 7 degrees, you really going to notice 7 degrees? Yeah, we will notice 7 degrees, Colin. We will. Okay, Okay, this is looking promising. All the measurements pretty much correlate to what's on the computer. It's all clamped, so let's weld it up and then put the second one on. Hopefully it will mimic it and be exactly the same. I mean, I don't know how excited I'm allowed to get over two pieces of metal, but I'm very excited. As far as I can tell, these are absolutely identical. The angle is the same. I've put the spirit level on the top. It is dead level, which means these two plates are in exactly the same place. So when we mount it to the hub, there won't be any wonkiness like that. That is a good sign. Right, I'm going to bolt them onto the hub and then kind of plonk them on some base box section, which will then go onto a base plate, which then attaches to the bearing. I think. There is no exact plan to this. You've probably worked that out already. I kind of make it up as I go along. There we go.
Giraffes on stilts. Giraffes on stilts. Giraffes on stilts. Everybody run. Giraffes on stilts. Giraffes on stilts.
And there I was, about to weld my box section together when I had an epiphany. If this ain't quite in the right place, if it don't sit on my plate properly, I'm gonna waste a whole lot of metal. So I backed up, went up to my laser cutter and cut myself a wooden template. Ooh.
Giraffes on stilts. Everybody run. Giraffes on stilts. Giraffes on stilts.
Okay, so I'm happy with the plate. Now I basically put these little sight holes in all four corners so I can see the bearing underneath, so I can help line it up, because this thing has to be dead in the centre of the bearing, because when we fix it to our axle in the middle, if it's not in the centre, then it will kind of be like, you know, walling around it, and it'll be tight spots, and then it will stress that. So, clamp it all up. I basically get this little roller, bend it down so it just touches the edge here, and then I spin it round, check it, spin it round, make sure it's even the whole way round. If I need to make any adjustments, just tap it, clamp it all down, and I know that is dead centre. Now I can drill all these holes right through into the bearing, and I know it's all good. And then once that's done, put the bit of boxes on, weld that on, put a bit of extra framing in, and then we can plonk old Bertha over there, straight on the top here. Yeah!
Giraffes on stilts. Giraffes on stilts. Giraffes on stilts. Giraffes on stilts. Everybody run.
Right, it's on. It's nice and free moving. That is a good sign. Now, obviously, to lower something down and get lined up with 12 holes, it can be quite complicated. But basically, if I just lever it hovering a little bit above the bearing, and then got two extra long bolts, I'll kind of line the holes up, pop them down from the top, screwed them down. That kind of got it in the right place. Drop the rest of it down with a telehandler, and then from underneath, because there were some holes which I'd actually plasma cut out for clamps to go through to hold this initially, they ended up being in the perfect position to kind of sight the holes and thread them in. It was nearly as if I'd thought about that before, but I didn't. It was a complete fluke. Right, counterweight and swing arm. Oh, this is an exciting bit now, isn't it? Yeah. Right, basically, I've made this ooking great big frame here, and basically this is going to bolt to our central hub, but what it does is it basically gets a bit wider, so anything we bolt onto here is going to have a little bit more mass. Now, there is some things to consider. Using our model, I will explain. Now, the easiest way to think about this, pivot point, if that is 10 metres and that is 1 metre to the weight, if I weigh 80 kilos, which I do, depending on how much stuff I've got in my pocket, basically, to counterbalance me on that, I'd need 800 kilos here, because it's 10 to 1. Now, we're not far off that. I'm going to make this 7.5 metres, not 10 metres, because the pivot is about 3 metres off the ground. So we still got our 10 metres in the air by doing that. Very nice. The thing we need to consider is, this obviously is going to weigh something, and the counterweight frame up to it is going to weigh something. So we don't just make a counterweight and that's it, I'm going to make the last part of this extend, so we'll be able to move it in and out. I'll be able to do this with my hands as well when I'm on it, so I'll be able to completely balance the whole system. So we can start putting some counterweights on here, get it roughly right, and then fine tune it at the end. Yeah.
With the frame attached, it's time to cast some massive concrete blocks for weights.
1200 per 600 per 400 box. Once it's full, it weighs 600 kilos. Now, in the box, we've got a few different things. We've got lifting eyes at each end, which go through, spread out, so obviously they'll key right into the concrete, so when we lift it up, it doesn't just pull the end off. These 6 tubes around the outside, this is what's gonna fix it to our swing. Basically, slide threaded rod through there, into the frame, that's what'll hold it on. This central hole is just because I seem to have left a hole through the centre of everything so far, and I'm just continuing on that trend. What for? Don't know yet. Now, to stop all this wandering, I've got this wooden template. Put this over the top once it's full. Check everything lines up, because if there's another weight goes on top of this, all these holes need to line up. Right, let's fill it up.
This is stormy weather. Have you looked out of the window at the world right now? Well, if you...
Okay, that's cured, looking good, but how much does it weigh? According to the online calculator, it should weigh 613 kilos. Let's have a look. 650, a bit more. Time to build a swing arm. Right, big long swing arm. Basically, done a little drawing, very nice. We've got to connect this square to this square with loads of bits of 50mm box section. But of course, it's going to be 6.5 metres long, which is way longer than my fabrication table. So I have a plan. I've got a small fabrication table, which Esco, the people that supplied me with this one, gave me for the other workshop. So I'm going to put one end on that, one end on this, and try and join them up and see if that works.
Now, making something so long over 2 fixed points, which aren't even on the same table, was always going to be tricky. But to make sure everything was symmetrical, I used an angle finder, checked the angles of each beam, and make sure they were absolutely identical to know that we were heading in the same direction. Now, after looking at it from the side, I can clearly see I've got something wrong. The bottom one was sloping up, and the top one was nearly level. And of course, it turns out I've fixed the centre of the small one on the other table at the wrong height. Drop this down a bit, all sorted, ready to weld up.
You ain't listening to me. Well, it's a one-way street. The chat's over to me. You're on transmit and not receive. Yeah.
Oh yes, I've made a crane. It's a beast. Now I did think, am I going to have to put some triangles in it for a bit of extra rigidity? It's fine, it's not no flex in it. And I did remind myself that I made a 360 swing, which is a very similar height to what this is going to be, a little bit lower, out of basically just one of these 50mm box sections. So I think 4 strapped together with a load of supports will be fine. Now, I'm itching to kind of bolt it onto our, centerpiece so we can see it all come together, but the bit that I'm going to attach to is going to slide in and out, and that's going to be a lot easier to work on while it's sat here on the bench. So what are you doing with that, Colin? Okay, my initial idea was to use one of these linear rails. However, to set all that up and get it all bolted up, I think it was going to be a little bit tricky. So I've gone super simple, and we're just going to have plates with nylon bushes bolted to the front. I've not got the nylon at the moment, so it's like wood. And then just put 3 of them, so it's nicely supported throughout its length. And then have a linear actuator or a ball screw at the end to push it in and out. Boom. Right, get that set up, get it bolted on. And then there's Rick. Right, it's all together. Looks like something you'd find in a shipping yard now. However, I've got a concern. This new piece I've made alone weighs 200 kilos, and I looked at it and thought, a bit heavy. So I got the JCB, lifted the end up. It takes 85 kilos to lift the very tip of that up. Now, of course, there's no counterweight on it at the moment, so I expect that. But our 650 kilo counterweight, once bolted on the end, of course, will tip it, but I don't think it will do it with me on it. We're going to need even more weight or to push the weight further away from the pivot on this side, but we can only do that so much before it won't swing under and smack that. So, let's just put it all together, see where we're at. We may have to make a lighter version of that, but let's, fingers crossed, we can adjust something. Okay, 600 kilos. Only lifts 15 kilos at the other end. Basically, we flip the scales up and see what it pulls instead of obviously what it lifts. But before we give up and go remaking anything, made another weight, 400 kilos. Get that strapped on and see where we're at after that. And we can't add any more after this because it won't swing under and go through the fork. So that's the maximum we can do in weight. So we've got to make the arm shorter or lighter, which is probably the thing. Now, to test it at the end, I've got a bag of sand which weighs 80 kilos. And that's me in sand, which is not a lot. It's about 10 shovelfuls. Right, let's get this other weight on and we'll see where we're at after that. Okay, we are there. Now, I've replaced these wooden shimmy bits with the actual nylon ones because these all broke as soon as I put my weight on it. But with a longer bar, if I get on here, actually sit on it, that is pretty much me, counterbalance look. And oh, this is going to be so much fun. Oh man, this is going to be brilliant. Right. Okay, next up I need to somehow work out how I'm going to attach myself to this, because I'm not sure how I'm doing that yet. Okay, after messing around and chopping up bits of harness, messing around with bits of rubber, I've settled on this design. The toilet seat bike seat ring. Yes, this basically will go on a bearing on the end, so it'll only spin in one axis, but that will keep me upright, of course, when it moves, so I'll always be standing upright. Now, I'm thinking this is something that is going to evolve as it goes on, because I'd like to have a lot more control than just spinning on one axis. But, you know, baby steps. Now, this is critical to me being able to do things like they do in the game, and also you don't really want to see this as much, so I think if this proves successful, I'll probably then remove this front bit of this ring, so you can't see it at all, because at the moment I strap on myself with like this little belt strap that goes around here. But anyway, let's put it on and let's test it.
I just passed up a job in the city, sitting so pretty on my big white jet. Could've been the man your dad wanted in a pinstripe suit, but took my bags and left. I just passed up a job in the city. Why you gon' miss me? 'Cause she's had the best. I just passed up a job in the city, sitting so pretty on a big white jet.
It's not very comfy. Right, let's release sand, Colin. Yeah. Oh my God.
And it was in that moment that my Space Ninja days had started.
This is brilliant. Look, the roof of the JCB.
Bullet jumps, wall runs, all of a sudden seemed completely possible.
Yeah!
It was like I was on the moon and half weightlessness. It's just so much fun.
He's on the ceiling! Bring back down again. How awesome is this? Right, we need a couple of things. I need to be able to move this in and out while I'm on it. I also need to be able to stop it, because once it gets going, there's a lot of inertia. So I need to get the brakes, the movement in. Also, I've got like a little thing in my hand so I can control all that. Oh! But this is a great start. I don't actually want to get off it. It's so much fun. Okay, mechanically we are finished. We've got this little hand fob, bottom button. Moves the bar in and out so I can fine tune the balance. The top two operate the brakes for spinning and rotating upwards. Now, I'm very pleased with myself with this because I've pretty much made this single-handedly. Yeah, Rick's been like hovering around in the background, but it's actually me that's made all this, and I'm quite impressed for one person to have done all this. Of course, the JCB has come in very handy. But anyway, all I've got to do now, take it outside, paint it, and I just cannot wait to be able to jump and go all the way over.
So, subscribe for the next video where I'll be becoming a wall-running, bullet-jumping, parkour, Tenno specialist space ninja.
Yeah.